This is So Fail, So Good, the podcast that changes the way we talk about failure from women who've lived through it and learned. Today on the show, we have Juhi Gupta. Juhi is the founder and CEO of Frigo Foods. She became an entrepreneur later in life after working 17 years in the corporate world in finance for massive companies like Texaco and Pillsbury. Inspired while packing lunches for her two young boys in 2012, Juhi created Frigo, an award-winning patented glass and silicone food container. After 5 minutes speaking with Juhi, I knew this woman was a hard worker. She goes after what she wants with a steadfast and clear direction. Juhi is smart as a whip, yet incredibly humble about the failures along the way. Her story shows the harsh realities we're faced with when failure hits and we are forced to question everything. Okay. On to the show. Juhi Gupta, welcome to the show today. How are you?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me this morning.
So excited. And we'll just jump right in. So we're going to start from the very beginning. What was your first ever job, first paycheck you received?
Oh, gosh. It takes me years back. I remember my first paycheck was when I was working for my university, University of Houston, in the housekeeping division because I had written a small computer program for them to calculate wages. And so that was my first paycheck.
Did you say you wrote a small computer program for them, just not casually?
Yes, because that's what I was studying at the University of Houston was computer science.
Wow.
So, and I walked up to them and I said, hey, how are you guys doing your paychecks? And at that time, it was very manual process. And so I thought that was a great opportunity for me to kind of get my hands into a live project.
Yeah.
And it was a very simple program, but just to calculate
very modest.
it.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's a pretty interesting first job, I must say. And so you grew up in India and you went to a boarding school there. And then you came to the U.S.
That's right.
For your undergrad. Okay.
That's right.
And then you went to, you said Houston, TCU after that, or, what was that like?
Oh, sure. So I grew up in India. I was in a boarding school in India. And my parents, however, have always been here. My dad actually graduated from Purdue University, and he's an engineer, worked at NASA for a number of years. So after high school, their thought was that me and my brother would come here for our education or the undergrad. And so at that time, my parents were in Fort Worth, Texas. Mm-hmm. And after coming here, I was accepted at Texas Christian University, TCU. And that was, I must say, it was quite the phase in my life where I was completely lost. It's one of those moments where I just didn't know how to assimilate myself in this new culture because growing up in India, although we did grow up with Western ideology, especially music, I mean, we were listening to Dire Straits and, Bruce Springsteen and John Denver and listening to, world BBC news. But so we were very familiar with Western ideologies. But I think everything was very cohesive back there. I mean, very gregarious. We did everything in groups. And then after coming here, and you're thrown into this culture where everybody's very self-reliant, especially university, very independent. So that was a bit of a culture shock, I would say. But on the other hand, the faculty and the associations within the university system, they really worked very hard to kind of make you feel comfortable, assimilate you. The professors would throw backyard barbecues or whatever, and that's how you kind of, and then MTV came on scene, and then it was just, it was fantastic. Those teen years, college years were just wonderful, and but yeah, so that was very fascinating. But then also, we were talking about computer science. One of the challenges was, what do I study? Mm-hmm. And my dad was an engineer, and he always felt like your safest bet is to be in a technical field. And computer science at that time was all the rage. This is early 80s. And I was like, oh, I wanted to be an artist, and study something in commerce or, so then that's how I delved into computer science.
And that was your major. That's what you graduated with.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. So, well, first, just to back up, because a boarding school in India, going from that to TCU, that's a big jump and a big transition. I know you talked about the culture shift, but can you just describe to me what it was like a little bit more growing up, being at a boarding school, and then just getting to America in such a different environment, and maybe how you dealt with that?
Oh, sure. Sure. Well, in a boarding school, we're very interdependent. Mm-hmm. So it's we have cliques, we have girlfriends, we do everything together. We eat and we walk to school together. We just it's very, very.
It's like your family.
It's
right?
exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
For 7-8 years, they're your family, away from your family, and so. Again, my parents also, one of the things I wanted to add to this is, like I said, we were very familiar with Western culture. We'd traveled to Europe, and, my parents were living in Africa, so we were traveling to Africa and just exposed to a lot of the Western shows, so familiarity with Western culture was nothing new. Mm-hmm. That was very comfortable with that. But to be kind of dropped in the middle of a not so urban center at that time, Fort Worth was still a very small city, and TCU was a Christian school. It's a very small school, a very preppy school. And at that time, there weren't as many minorities either.
Right.
And therefore, but in some ways, I was ecstatic to be independent. But in other ways, it was lonely because, we kind of, birds of a feather flock together kind of a thing. And there was really nobody there that you could kind of talk to really heart to heart. And, I was missing my friends. And after 8 years, even just staying with my parents was a challenge, So all of those things combined and just navigating, I remember we didn't drive, so just taking public buses at that time. It was just the logistics of how you get from point A to point B, and all of that navigation, all of that learning. There were days where like, why am I here?
Right.
I want to go back, but like everything else, it takes time. You have to get through it with patience, have an open mind. And those are some of the traits that would get you through anything in life.
Finding the community.
And like I said, even the the faculty, and then I did end up making friends, and it was fantastic. And then I had some evening classes, and I had friends giving me rides back home. I didn't have to ride the bus anymore. So all of those things really were. Again, that interdependence, that's what humanity, we really depend on, that interdependence.
We all need that connection,
So,
absolutely. Yeah. And so it sounds like you find your community eventually. It takes a little time. The shift is significant. I think everybody going to college, it's a huge shock to the system. It's very different from what you're doing before. So for you, let's take that to an extreme.
Right, exactly.
And then you graduate with a degree in computer science.
Yes.
Okay. And then once you graduate, you're sending out your resumes, trying to get, the big job. Was there at any point during this time the idea of entrepreneurship, or was it all about, kind of following your dad's hopeful dreams for you to get that big job and in a technical field?
Oh, sure. No, I wanted to make money. The reason I went to professional school and I worked very hard was to earn money. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be on my feet as quickly as possible, and I wanted to enjoy life. I wanted to travel the world. I wanted to buy things I wanted to buy, and so that is precisely the reason that I got myself into computer science, because I knew it was a safe choice. I knew it was very on trend. I knew that there were job opportunities in technical field. In fact, I had just I'd applied to the top 10. I literally went down the Fortune 100 and applied to the top 10. And I heard back from two companies. I remember IBM and Texaco. And eventually I didn't get into IBM, but I got into Texaco. But that was, at that time, like I said, technical field was a safe choice, and everybody was looking for computer science graduates. So that's how I totally wanted to get back and like get on my feet and really start earning.
That independence and
Oh yeah.
so Texaco is the next step. And how long did you stay at Texaco? Did you enjoy it there?
It was the best time of my life. Outside of boarding school. I worked there for 9 years. At that time, Texaco was, I would say, a cash cow. It was an oil company, and oil was huge. It's one of the top 10 corporations in the world, like, all the oil companies. And I remember it was General Motors, AT&T, and oil companies were made the top 15 companies. And there was a lot of, they spoiled us. They literally did. I mean, wining, dining. And I remember one of the highlights of working at Texaco was they were associated with Metropolitan Opera. And that was my first exposure to opera. And they would just invite people and celebrities left and right to come and talk to us. And Broncow, the one of the newscasters,
Steve Brokaw? No.
Sorry, I don't remember. Maybe he'll come later. Kevin Murphy from the Metropolitan Opera. Andrea, the race car driver. And I'm sorry, I'm not recalling the names.
You're getting
but
spoiled as your first job out of college.
Exactly. All of them are just coming,
wow.
and we're just chit-chatting with them. Had the opportunity to meet with them. That was before the iPhones, so unfortunately we couldn't take photographs with them. But yeah, so that was a fantastic time.
You're living the high life, and you're loving
living the high life. But I will tell you, 2 years into my job into computer science, I'm like, okay, what did I get myself into? Because it was getting grueling. It was getting boring, actually, to be in that silo of just being in the computer, sort of just being at your desk all day and not being able to interact with a lot of people or other divisions of the corporation. And that's where I started to itch. I was itching to do something else and how to expand my not only career, but my worldview. And that's when I decided to do my MBA.
Oh, sure. So you get your MBA in finance and international management, right? Yes. And then after that, you get married.
Yes.
You leave Texaco,
yes.
And that's how you arrive in this wonderful state of Minnesota. What happened?
Beautiful Minneapolis, Minnesota. Yes. This was, I believe, late 90s. My husband got a job. He's a lawyer. He got a job with a major corporation here. It was a great opportunity for him, and we just got married. And I'd been working, like I said, for 9 years, corporate career. And so I actually took some time off. I worked at Williams-Sonoma, set up my kitchen. It was a fantastic time. And then again, just wanted to get back to work. And then I landed my dream job. It couldn't have been any better than what I had. I was working at Pillsbury, international division, as a financial analyst, and just, building financial models, which is where the technical aspect came in. So that was a fantastic, fantastic opportunity. And Pillsbury was actually quite international at that time because, our CEO was from UK. And he had brought in a lot of European heads, and so it was just a great opportunity to travel and to work there at that time.
And all the while, you have a couple kiddos, right?
Yes.
You've got two boys.
Yes.
So you're working this role that I'm assuming you're working more nights, just with timing as far as international business goes. And you've got two kids at home. Talk to me about what that was like and balancing all of that.
Sure. So I had my son and my firstborn. I went, took a couple of months off. I stayed at home and then itching to get back to work. And then I went back to work, but then I went back part-time. And because I knew the field of finance or any service division in any corporation is you're at their beck and call. And especially going through some cycles, corporate cycles, you'd be working sometimes 12, 14 hours a day. And so managed to get through that. And also at that time, Pillsbury was merging with General Mills. So it was a very stressful time. Just going through that and a toddler at home and part-time and this mergers and acquisitions and not knowing what your future would be like. So, but also at that time, a couple of years later, I had my younger son, and it got to be a point where, I've worked 18 years in a corporate career. I really want to enjoy this time with my children. So I took some years off, and I stayed at home, and that was just fantastic to be able to see them walk and take the first steps. And I understand it's challenging for a lot of people, but for me, that was just, I'm just, thankful that I had that opportunity to stay at home.
What led you to that decision? Were there moments where you thought, okay, this balance isn't happening and how can I fix it? Or do you remember anything specific, like a moment that stands out to you?
Absolutely. Thanks for asking that question, Laura, because really what kind of drove me to this precipice, that this edge was, I remember working, like I said, in finance, and oftentimes I would stay late, and my husband's work was he would travel quite a bit. So a lot of times it was just me taking care of our son. And I remember one time, and actually more than once, I would, even in traffic, I would drive the feeder roads, it'd probably be illegal, just to rush to the daycare. And oftentimes I'd see the teacher sitting outside with my son with all the lights off. And I got to a point where, okay, they're either going to not take my son anymore, or I'm just, that was the breaking point for me. It was like, why am I doing this? It just didn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, I mean, it's very a blessing that you could come to that decision, and we know that not everybody has that, but it's also just such a difficult decision, and for your identity as well, to say, okay, I've been working for 18 years in the corporate world, and now now I'm going to be staying at home. What was that shift like? Do you remember it having an impact on your identity, sort of those early days?
To me, I actually felt, because motherhood is so important, and we bring these little people into our lives, into this world, and I think, they're due a certain amount of attention from us. And for me, I felt that this brought so much joy to me. And, after working hard for a number of years, doing what I could for myself and my career, I felt like this was a much deserved break for me. To be at home, to be with my children, and to be able to watch them grow.
And it's during this time that your entrepreneurial journey begins, while you're with the kids at home, and that's when you launch Frigo Foods. We're now in 2013, right? And you were inspired by packing lunches for your boys. Tell me about that process.
Sure.
What led you in those, at the first few months to launch the product? Let's just start from the beginning.
Sure. So when they were at home and my kids were at home, I really didn't miss work, because I was just, just enjoying their company, enjoying, watching them grow. Once they got back to, once they were in elementary school, and that's when I had a little bit of time to myself to kind of start, pondering and thinking, okay, what are my next steps? Because I clearly did not want to be a stay-at-home mom forever. And should I go back to work? Should I? And one of the things about entrepreneurs is that we're keenly aware people. We're always constantly looking around in our environment and trying to figure out, okay, how can I make this better? Or, how can I change this? And one of the moments that made a huge impact for me was this 2006 movie by Al Gore, An Inconvenient Truth. And that was the moment when I realized, okay, and I knew environment was my passion. And just, just how do we make small changes at home or in our daily lives to be able to live that sustainable life. And so this moment actually happened when I was packing lunches for my boys. And, it was actually a stressful time to pack healthy meals, because not only did you have to come up with ideas to pack meals, but then just the container itself. So at that time, the choices were glass, metal, and plastic. I grew up in India eating in metal containers. And I remember opening my lunchbox at school, and it just was not appetizing eating out of, especially, hot foods, and, they'd get cold. So I knew that I didn't want metal containers for all this fresh food that I was making for them. And plastic was, of course, it leaches toxins. So glass was the best option. But then you do not want to give glass to these toddlers because, they could hurt themselves. Mm-hmm. The glass is fragile. It can break easily. Or if they heat foods, it gets hot and they could burn themselves. So those were just some of the challenges in trying to find the right container. And this problem was actually staring me right in the face day after day after day. It was a stressful moment for me to pack a healthy lunch in a healthy container. So I still remember walking out of Sur La Table at that time, and I said, what if I just protect the glass with an outer layer? Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that just not only protect the glass, but then it would protect the fingers if you're heating up foods? So that was the moment. It was a light bulb moment for me. And I actually sat on this idea for a number of months because I wasn't sure the viability of this idea. And I did a lot of research. I was online for hours just trying to figure out if there was a similar product. Luckily, there wasn't. Mm-hmm. And so the first call I remember making was to Fakery Baker Daniels to get a patent. And then once I started working on the patent, then the next thought was, okay, how do I find somebody to design this product for me, to get an engineer? And I remember traveling to Hutchinson, to different factories, to not only design, but then to just have a mold in my hand to, touch and feel how the ultimate product would look like. So that was the process. So like I said, after I sat on it for a few months, I was just determined. I said, okay, there's no other product like this. And I was just determined to
get it into the world,
to get it out in the market, and just get it out as quickly as possible.
So from the time the idea came and the time you maybe had your first prototype of the container that would become Frigo Foods, how much time was that?
I would say that was about 8 months.
Oh, wow, that's fast.
8 months into getting the prototype from the company here to actually getting the product from China was about another year or so.
Got it.
So first you have to have the prototype because once you see the prototype, then you can make changes. For example, the first prototype I had was a round bowl because that's what I felt, it was a round shape, but then the cap was too big for little hands to twist and turn. So those are just some of the ideas where I felt like, okay, we need to change that, or, we cannot have any plastic components in this. So we need to go research some more materials. And that's how we ended up with silicone, because silicone is a very inert material. It's also very durable, and it's also very versatile. And so those are some of the changes, and even just tweaks here and there in all the design. And so all of those prototypes are actually done here. So you can just go visit the factories as often as you like, or even, watch them make your product and touch and feel. So once you have the design and the prototype to your liking, then we send it off to China to replicate that into
to mass produce it.
Yeah,
then.
exactly.
And so, making samples first.
Yeah.
Sure, because you don't want to get
exactly.
yet.
Exactly.
So it sounds, I mean, this is a product that inevitably will cost money, right? I mean, it's a, instead of it being
expensive materials.
Right.
Yes.
So where did you start for that, for getting the money to raise the capital to do this project, to get that first prototype, and then eventually even finding the right factory? I'm sure you had to travel to China. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So it's self-funded. So far, I had, because I'd worked for a number of years, so I did have some cash on me. And that was, I wanted to not jump into sort of the funding bandwagon at that time, because I really didn't know where this product was going to go or where this business was going to go. So this was a risk I decided to take on my own and invest my own money into this, which I did at that time. And yes, silicone is a very expensive material, and that's one of the reasons we got it made in China, because I did evaluate factories in the United States, but they were just twice as expensive. And so the engineer I was working with actually had been to China, and so we made a first trip together, and we had vetted out some factories. And what was important were two things. One is that they spoke English. And number two was that we actually had sent auditing firms to make sure that the factories were clean and they were paying their employees, and the environment was nice, and all of those things. And once the audit reports came back, then we narrowed down further to two factories, one for glass, one for silicone. And then we visited China and visited those two factories, and that's how we built relationships. And we to this day we still have those factories.
That's very impressive. I would have no idea where to begin. And so once you've got the product in the world, basically, so you get your prototype back.
We get our samples.
You get samples. Yeah. What is the process like? Can you remember those first few months that followed? That the packaging is done, you're putting it out in the world, you've got your website live, and are you trying to get wholesale relationships? What's the next steps?
So I still remember one of the executives of Target was actually his son and my son. They used to play soccer together. And I just walked up to him and I said, "Oh, by the way, I have this fantastic product." And they're like, "Oh, great. Have you heard of International Housewares Association?" And I said, "No." "Well, you should go there. That's the biggest houseware show in the world. And that is where you should showcase your product." And
what was that called again? International?
IHA, International Housewares Association. So that's every year they have a show in Chicago.
Okay.
So I took a morning flight. I walked the floor. It's huge. It's a convention center. Walked the floor, made some connections, and especially made connection with a company that was selling to Amazon at that time. And I flew back that evening, continued our communication. And so the first thing I did was I got on Amazon with the help of this company. And I still remember when I got into Lake Winds here, a local organic store in the co-op, and I was demoing my product, and she said, "Oh, I just bought that." I'm like, "Where?" "Amazon." She had just purely bought the product just by doing a search on Amazon. And to me, that moment was such a revelation. I was just like, "Oh my goodness, this is the power of online shopping." So after that, I also, just to track back a little bit, the first that one day that I was at that show, I was standing in line for coffee, and these two buyers were in front of me, and they happened to be from Container Store. And I was like, "Oh, this is too good to be true. This is what I've been waiting for my entire life." So I walked up to them, and they were very nice, and I demoed the product. I dropped it on the floor, and I'm like, "Well, I'm still out of my basement." They're like, "Oh, we've worked with companies that are out of their basement, moms,
And you dropped it on the floor because benefit of
the product, because the glass wouldn't break,
right,
because the sleeve actually cushions the glass. Right. So we exchanged business cards, and I came back, and I must have communicated with them for 7 months and no response at all. It was just cold. So I'm like, what gives? So then somebody said, then I called them, and one of the executive secretaries, they said, oh, if you want to make an appointment with them, you should get a booth at the IHA. And then they'll come visit your booth. I'm like, oh, okay, great. So then I get the booth at the IHA, and then they also have something called the Innovation Awards. And I said, okay, fine, I'll just put my product, because, at this point, I mean, you're feeling pretty good about this product. You put it out in the world. My kids have been using it for like a year now, and feeling...
this is like 2014.
Exactly.
There really aren't any other sort of products out there that are...
similar to this.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And the previous year, just to clarify, you went and you walked around and sort of like
trying to get a sense of what the world, this housewares world was, because I didn't even, this terminology of housewares was not even anywhere near what I imagined what it would be.
So now you get a booth, you've put your product in that innovation
exactly
award. Okay.
And then I'm one of the top 5 finalists. And so, and then they give you this award. There's a huge glass trophy that they give you to put at your booth. And that's when the buyers, and they also have the section where the award-winning products go, and that's where all the buyers go from all major retailers.
Makes sense.
And that's how these retailers came to my booth, and I was able to communicate and demo the product, and that's how I was able to get into Crate and Barrel and Container Store within the first year of launch.
Wow. So things must be feeling good. You are in now 2 major retailers. Within a year, you're like, okay, I'm so glad I did this. This is rocking and rolling.
Yes.
And it's the product that you dreamed up. It's in the world. It's in stores. I mean, that's got to feel great.
Yes. Yes.
What do you remember loving about this experience during that time, and what do you remember was challenging?
Sure. I remember it's like, I've arrived. I mean, this was a breeze. I mean, I'm thinking this is too good to be true. There's got to be something around the corner that I'm like missing. And of course, so that was obviously the highlight of the launch of the product, because it's very validating, right? You put a product out in the world, people want it, you win an award. I mean, it couldn't get better than that. But what the challenging part was, because I was still not aware of the industry. I still was not aware of what's the next move? Where do I go from here? And I also, obviously, you'd wake up every morning, it's like, okay, I hope people are buying my product, because if they don't buy your product, you're going to be dropped very quickly, just as quickly you were able to get on those platforms. They'll drop you. And that's what ended up happening is the product sat there on the shelves. It was very new. And because it was silicone, it covers the outer sleeve of the glass is actually covered, so you can't see the glass. And it sat next to plastic and metal containers, and it just sat there. People didn't know what the product was. They had never seen a product like that before, and they couldn't see the glass. So, so it's a lot of sort of challenges with the product being sitting on the shelves without any marketing dollars or without any demos or without any, materials to hand out. So that was the biggest challenge. And sure enough, after a year or so, Crate and Barrel dropped us because our sales were low. And 2 years later, Container Store dropped us because we were not selling enough units for it to be, viable for them. And so that's where the failure part came in.
I mean, and when you get the word from the second store, from Container Store, dropping your product, do you remember where you were? And do you remember like what it felt like those days after, sort of questioning probably the product itself or what to do next, or, how to reevaluate where you're going to go with selling?
Sure. And I still remember, actually, the buyer was so sweet from the Container Store. She actually called me. She didn't send this over the email. She said, Juhi, we're having issues with this product, and we're considering dropping the line. And my heart just, sank. It was just, I try to be as mature on the phone as possible. I said, I understand, and you have to do what you need to do. So now, once it sinks in, then really it was like, this is it. I mean, where do I go from here? This was my dream. To dream stores, then I thought this was my consumer. If this consumer is not buying my product, where do I sell my product? How do I go from here? But I remember one of the things that was in my favor at that time was this online trend. People were moving from brick and mortars to online. And this is about 5 years ago. And after a year of evaluation, I changed the packaging in that time. I, started more and more advertising on Amazon. And I just wanted to the focus started being more online. And what I realized was online, there are better margins. And just sort of, the shipping costs were lower. So all of those things combined, it was a platform where I felt that I could pivot to after that first failure.
And in those days after, how did you, for a lot of people, I think it would be sort of a moment to hide and retreat and potentially give up. Do you know what it was within you, that courage to say, it didn't work out there, but this isn't going to stop me. This isn't the end of the story for my business. Where did you think that courage came from?
That's a very good question, Laura. I think two things. One is that you have to focus on what things you're grateful for in life. You have a roof over your head, you have your kids to take care of. So those are just some of the things that kind of get you through. You wade the waters. And number two is always remember that in failure, you're at the crossroads. Yeah, one road is not looking that great, but then this other road opens that you would have never considered before, right? So it's a mystery, right? Something unexpected happens after a failure. And so you have to be open to that. You have to be open to new experiences and how to continue to challenge yourself. Because at the end of the day, it's, if you're doing something simple, a million other people are probably doing this. But if you're doing something hard, you are going to fail. There is innovation in failure. It's always through trial and error that you succeed or you get wherever you need to be. If it was such a straight line, like I said, a million people would do it. Right. But so it's actually good to fail.
It is.
Because it teaches you certain lessons. It teaches you to pivot. It teaches you to be creative. It teaches you to, have the humility. And have continue to have that confidence. This is a phase. This doesn't destroy who you are. There's a big stormy cloud on top of your head, and you think you're the only one being showered by this, or this thunder or lightning bolt. But then this cloud is just passing through. It could be somebody else tomorrow. It could be So you just have to take that in stride and just stay put, stay solid, and just you have to get through it.
I really like that visual. I'm going to think about that now at the next moment. It's so true that it is. I like the quote, everything is temporary, and just to remind ourselves of that. And we never do that when something wonderful is going on. It's not like...
That's a good point.
You're thinking and realizing we usually, if something great is going, you're wondering, when's this going to end?
Yeah.
And if you kind of question, I bet this won't last long. I better enjoy it right now. Wouldn't it be great if we could do that in those moments where we say, this isn't going to last long? It would be really nice to flip that on its head. But that's really well put. And so at this point, you're realizing, all right, I'm pivoting, I'm going online. And I think you said when we first spoke, you got a board at this point. You got some really sound advice. Walk me through... and like home shopping network calls. So yeah, let's go through to that next phase of the business.
So after my first failure, I was rethinking the strategy. So again, you have to just just get out there. So there was a convention here in the Twin Cities for entrepreneurs to kind of showcase your product, and that's where I met some other entrepreneurs and people who were in this environment, and so I reached out to them, and that's how I got my first board of 3 board members, and they were just phenomenal. They really helped me kind of wade the waters and just kind of open up my mind to the industry and how to navigate the industry. At that time, I also was one of the top 10 finalists for a Minnesota Cup because they entered me for this competition. And so that was very reassuring. Back again after the failure, kind of getting back on my feet again. And, this ups and downs, and you take it all with stride and not get too excited, not too depressed. You kind of have a neutral, sort of a balanced outlook. And so that was fantastic. And
for those who don't know, what is the Minnesota Cup?
So Minnesota Cup is a competition for entrepreneurs. And it is in association with the University of Minnesota. I believe there are over 200 submissions every year from across the state of Minnesota. And then they'll pick the best products or the best companies. And then, once they reevaluate, you have to actually make a pitch. You have to, in front of a lot of, there's a lot of fundraisers and companies, and then they'll select the top 3.
Sure.
And once they select the top 3, then obviously that's where the funding rounds come in.
Sure.
So once I got my board of advisors, and I was kind of getting back on my feet again, I was at the Houseware Show, and this is 2017, and my next move was to really kind of get on a home shopping network because I figured I could get on that platform and really demo the product, get out there and show what this product is really all about. It's not just storage; it's all of these things. So Home Shopping Network had this. It's called American Dreams. It's sort of like Shark Tank, where you go pitch your product for like 5 minutes, and then if they like you enough, they'll invite you to be on Home Shopping Network. And so I pitched my product, and I think they select about 25% companies, and I was selected, and they invited me to Florida to sell my product on Home Shopping Network, and that was an excellent experience. It was very nerve-wracking because you had to be in front of this audience, this consumer base, and millions of people, and they just give you 2 hours of training, and they have mics all around you, and the lights going off, and you have to just focus the light that's on the left or the light on the right, and it was just, oh my goodness, it was. So they
crazy. Wanted you to be the one. Pitching,
exactly. Wow. Talking to this audience, and this is like a half-hour long, show program. So that was I was nervous. I was very, very nervous, but luckily, we sold very well. And as we're getting orders in, this is a few months past my appearance on Home Shopping Network. Our glass factory burns down. So at this point, I'm thinking, okay, if I can't get my supplier to supply my product, I might as well just shut my business down. So that was another very challenging time for me. And they kept, stalling us. They were like, oh, we'll be up and running in 2 months. We'll be up and running in 3 months. And meanwhile, 7 months go by and I'm out of inventory.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So to take it a step back, you get on the Home Shopping Network. This is basically a lifeline. You're thinking, okay, and then it sells. It's nerve-wracking, but what a great challenge to kind of get your confidence back, right? And
exactly.
So then you said your factory burns down. Okay, so when you got that call, what do you remember feeling?
I really, at that time when they said the factory burned down, I'm like, oh, fine, I'm sure they'll be back up and running. It's probably one section of the factory that burned down. It's not the whole factory, I mean, they can't just stop making.
Right, looking on the bright side.
Looking at the bright side. And, well, 2 weeks later, the whole factory burned down. I mean, so that was, and here's the important thing that you have to remember is in China, it's hard to build relationships, and once you have that relationship, you keep it for a very long time because you build that trust, and to kind of just go through this process all over again to find a new factory. It would take me like 2 years, and to vet it and to get it audited, all of those things. That was to me, I felt like I can get up and go through this again. I was thinking of alternatives at that point. I was thinking, what if I just start selling metal containers, food containers?
Sure.
I mean, forget, and so that was extremely challenging for me too.
Sure.
And, okay, and then I was thinking, okay, I'll sell through my inventory. And I actually went on Alibaba, just trying to source a lot of glass manufacturers. But unfortunately, a lot of them wanted bigger quantities, 50,000 units. And, I didn't have that kind of money. And, I would just sit on, just sending emails day and night. And, with China, with the, 12-hour difference, I'd be actually up at night just kind of, talking and dealing with them. So this went on for a few months. And I was still in constant communication with one of the ex-employees of the ex-factory. And luckily, it took her some time to get off on her feet, but then she started this glass factory herself. And so this is about 8-9 months into this whole fiasco. I reached out to her again. I said, are you up and running? And she said, I am. I said, can you produce this? And again, this is where the relationship comes in. Yeah. And I had that relationship with her, thank God, and she was able to produce the glass for me at that time.
So to back up a minute, I mean, that's amazing. But I'm sure before that happened, like you said, those late nights, were you ever thinking this might be the end of Frigo? And
every day,
yeah,
every day I was thinking of alternatives. I said, if it's giving me, if I'm losing all my hair, and I'm like, why am I in this? Why am I doing this? And, I think one of the things you have to remember is why are you doing this? You're on a mission. You want to put a sustainable product out there. You want to do good. You want to leave this world a better place than you found it. So when you have all these positive energies, there's some adrenaline rush that gets you through this because you are so focused and just trying to find an answer and just trying to get through this, because this is not the first time I've been through a failure. I did that before. I got through it. And so you have to convince yourself you will get through this. Mm-hmm. Something from the universe is going to, line up all the stars and you will be back up and running. And I never really felt at that time that I'm just going to drop everything and just kind of go back to work. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I don't think I ever felt that. I did go through my very low lows, but I think I stayed positive. I felt something in the universe has brought me this far. It's going to get me through this.
And what you're describing to me sounds like the epitome of the word resilience, because that was going to be my next question, and you've kind of already answered it, because it is a hard thing to put to words, how and where we find resilience. It can be such a mystery until you're put in the situation. And it sounds like for you it was your mission, and why you were doing it that kept you on that focused path that I'm not going to give up here, but I will got to find another way out, another tunnel or something.
Exactly. And the universe did line up the stars, and the universe did send me this person in a form of an angel, and who helped me back up and running. And
So she starts producing the glass for you in this new glass factory, but you still get that relationship. And once you're back up and running, Then we'll fast forward, we're in 2018, and things really start to turn around. Tell me what happnes next.
Well, it didn't turn around quite quickly enough. It still took some time to kind of build up that, from nothing to kind of restarting all over again. But another trend was happening in my favor, which is the sustainability aspect of it. People were moving away from plastics. And this just literally has happened in the last couple of years. And all of a sudden, I'm finding, and then, of course, the other thing, this time my pivot was redesigning my website. So better SEO, and it just better, more modern technology and better photographs. And that was one of the things I invested in, which I'm glad I did because people were able to find my product much easier. So people were really, consumers were now more aware of what plastics can do to you. And also not only to your body, but what it's doing to the planet. So people are moving away from plastics, and that has been a huge boon for us. Sure. And it's so now we're kind of back on track, and we're finding, more and more sales. I got on Home Depot, and this year we got on this fantastic site called Earth Hero, where all they do is sustainability, sustainably sourced products is all they sell. And so these are all just some of the sites that's more and more awareness, consumer awareness, which has always been the biggest challenge for us. Sure. is because people at the end of the day still want convenience. Plastics, buy $4 toss. And, and that's one of the things we want to encourage people to do is reuse and reduce. Right. That's our mission. And the product speaks to that because this product will last you 20 years.
Right.
And it's a high quality product. It's great for the planet. It's great for your body. It's very healthy. And so those are just some of the things that I think consumers are starting to appreciate more and more.
You were a little ahead of the trend before, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's caught up. And so timing is also important.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So where is Juhi Gupta now? And what are you dreaming big about?
Well, the dream is for every household to have a Frigo product in their kitchen. I am still not, I would never say that I'm riding high or anything like that because I know that something could be lurking right around the corner. Sure. And I have to be prepared for that. But on the other hand, keep your feet on the ground, head high in the sky, and you just focus on how to get the product out to as many people, to as many platforms, via social media or through some marketing, bloggers, influencers. And that's just a constant push. You just, keep pushing, you keep chugging, you keep working hard. And the biggest thing is the belief, right? You believe in your product and you believe that ultimately people will believe in it. And you put something good out into the world and you feel good about that. And that is, that is my mission is if I can change somebody's life for the better and better eating healthy, habit, healthier eating habit, I think I feel like I would have made a difference.
I love that. So my last question for you, hindsight is everything, very powerful. And knowing what you know now and where you are now, what advice would you give yourself when you were going through, maybe it's that first challenge where you got that call and now you're realizing, okay, what do I do next? I'm not in Crate and Barrel anymore. I'm not in the Container Store. When your factory burns down, what would you have told yourself during those times and feeling of just failure?
I think looking back, a few times that I thought this was the end of the world, I probably shouldn't have beaten myself up over it that much because, it is fleeting. It's more than not, it is fleeting. I think it's important you take care of yourself, you take care of your mental health, you take care of, your family. Those are all more important things in life. And, one of the things product-wise, business-wise, I would say is that, the pricing is very important. I just wish I had done more research on the pricing because I felt I'm putting this high-quality product and the consumer will buy it. But there comes a certain
Threshold.
Exactly, that threshold, that point where, 2 cents above or 2 cents below, so you have to be very savvy about the pricing of it. And so we're learning that. I'm learning about the pricing and how to do promotions. Those are all very important things to learn. And launching a business, like I said, nobody, even people who've been in it for 10, 20 years, have all the answers. It's a trial and error. You gauge the market, you gauge the sensibilities of the consumer, and that's how you make decisions. Every day you're changing. Every day you're changing something, or moving a needle, the point, so from A to B. And so those are just some of the things that you just continue to do. And but the bottom line is, if you know why you're doing this, why you're putting this product out there, have that core sense of your mission, that everything all your decisions will automatically sort of prioritize towards that, and they will end up being the right decisions.
Very well said. Thank you, Juhi. It was so wonderful to have you on the show today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much. I hope I've been able to have, I enjoyed sharing my story.
We loved having you.
Thank you so much.
Did you notice how Juhi said there is innovation in failure? It's part of the fabric. It's how these things work. This perspective really got me thinking about failures, mistakes, missteps that have led to innovation. So I started doing some research, and I found this great article from Inc. titled "Why Failure is the Foundation of Innovation" by Paul Shoemaker. In the article, Shoemaker says, quote, "Mistakes allow for variation far beyond what was expected. You make a wrong turn, but find a better road to your destination." He goes on to say that even though mistakes and failures are crucial to innovations, many companies are not very good at accepting failure. And the reason for this is many managers praise results rather than innovation. And for companies to be successful, he argues they need to strike a balance between performance and learning cultures. A key obstacle to this are deeply ingrained aversion to failure. Your psyche registers pain more strongly than loss. So we need to work on reframing failure as perhaps, quote, time-release success. Just view it as the bitter medicine that we need for innovation, and then take a few gulps. I loved this metaphor. Seeing failure as a bitter medicine we just need to swig down and make room for innovation. As Juhi said, failing is innovating. It's just part of the fabric. It's how these things work. Juhi's business improved and changed from the setbacks she faced. Of course, it's hard to see it in the moment, but be patient. Nothing good comes easy. Thank you so much for listening to So Fail, So Good. If you want to know more about the show or today's guest, visit sofailsogood.com. This is a Matriarch Digital Media production. Executive producer Twyla Dang. If you want to know more about Matriarch or other podcasts on the network, head to matriarchdm.com.